What's up, everyone? It's ya boy, DJ Slate. I got to do that in all my videos. You know, it's a YouTube content creator thing.
Yeah, I'm just not prepared for it, ever.
And your boy, Mr. Adam Michelangelo. No belly, no telly, no jelly on his peanut butter sandwich. I got bars.
That's me.
There you go. Well, hello. Welcome back from spring break. We hope that you all had a restful time. I am not recording on my fancy setup in the office because it's not set up right now. And this is a little more comfortable here from the couch with my nice plain white wall in the background. Any comments or questions on that, Mr. Novelli?
No, I think you're chilling. I kind of like the casual look. It makes me look a little less out of place.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough, man. Glad to do my part. We the people, right?
Uh-huh.
All right, let's get down to business here. We're gonna do our best to make this quick. The expectation right now is you just take notes. We're not gonna have a Google form for you to fill out, but this content, however, will be showing up on a timed write that we are scheduling. I'm guessing sometime in May. We got probably two and a half more lessons on Hitler, and then we're moving into Castro. Again, we're on the methods used by authoritarians to rise to power. If you have not been keeping up with the content, you should be able to find all those videos in the Google Classroom. This is episode 6 in our content on the methods that Hitler used to rise to power. And again, we'll be adding some episodes for Castro as well in the coming weeks. A review on the 5 methods used by authoritarians to rise to power. There's ideology, there's persuasion and coercion, role of the leader, use of force, and propaganda. There are 5 methods that authoritarians use to rise to power per the IBO standards. And you've seen, I've sort of laid out where the content that we've taught in the first 5 episodes fit in these methods. So in ideology, we find most of that ideology harbored in the 25-point program. We also covered the concept of the Führer cult, which we will be adding to today. We looked at persuasion, coercion in the Munich beer hall push. There is much more persuasion and coercion on the not so distant horizon. We have the role of the leader, which we found in the beer hall push, as well as the Führer cult. The Führer cult really is the role of the leader as it relates to Hitler's rise. We have use of force, which we know was employed in the beer hall push, and it was failed. It was a failed use of force. There were several components embedded in the NSDAP that took this concept of force and put it into use in Germany. The Hitler Assault Squad, the SA, and more to come. Last, certainly not least, is propaganda. We had a good discussion on propaganda in our last episode. It's all of these events that we've covered were used and employed by Hitler and the NSDAP to make their movement appear to be what was best for the people of Germany and for the future of the United Nation of Germany. So this is just a review on what we've covered and how it fits into the 5 methods employed by at least one authoritarian in Adolf Hitler. So we are now moving into Hitler's consolidation of power in the NSDAP. There's a couple items on Hitler's quote-unquote checklist that he has to accomplish before he can completely rise to power in Germany. But he has to first be the sole power in the Nazi Party. And he, up until 1930, shared that power with several leaders, including Strasser, the leader of the socialist arm, the socialist wing of the NSDAP. Right now, we are in September 1930. The Grand Coalition has just lost their grip on the Reichstag. Today's lesson, we're going to be going backwards to May of 1930 to look at how Hitler consolidated his authority in the NSDAP. So while the Grand Coalition was failing, as covered in our last episode, the Nazi Party was experiencing pretty significant internal disputes in their own party. In particular, the dispute centered on the role that the party should play in assisting the unions around Germany as they faced massive layoffs and unemployment numbers. According to Kershaw, this dispute in the NSDAP, when it came to a head, it crystallized once more around the issue of whether there could be any separation of the idea from the leader. And Strasser, the leader of the socialist wing, was in favor of the party becoming centered on an ideology that was similar to socialism, where support of unionized workers would be a central tenet. The defense of the small man was a centralized tenet. But basically, the fight against big business was what Strasser wanted the party to be. And then the leader was supposed to move to that ideology. And this is where a clash happens in the NSDAP. Hitler was not in favor of supporting striking workers. Hitler knew that to be a successful political party, they were going to have to be united with big business. And that was not something that Hitler or the NSDAP had been successful in doing up through September 1930. And so there was a pretty big fight in the NSDAP. On May 21st, 1930, Hitler invites Strasser to his hotel for lengthy discussions. These discussions, according to Strasser's account, which is the only, by the way, the only public account of this meeting, according to his account, the key points were leadership and socialism, and Strasser's position was that a leader must serve the idea and not the idea serving the leader. Hitler says, no, that's not how this is going to work. He says, we need to instead be the leader. I mean, you see Strasser, he says, to this alone, we can devote ourselves entirely. To this alone, meaning that the leader serves the idea. And the reason why Strasser wanted this, you can see this, is that the leader's allowed to make mistakes when the ideology is the driving force. And Hitler says, what you're saying is outrageous nonsense. He says, that's not how it should work at all. The leader should be, according to Hitler, the idea. So Hitler says we want nothing to do with the ideology driving what the leader does. So that's the most revolting democracy that we want nothing more to do with. For us, the leader is the idea, and each party member must obey only the leader. Thus, the Führer cult is becoming ingrained as the sole ideology of the NSDAP. He said further that there's only one possible kind of revolution, and it is not economic or political or social. It is a racial revolution. He, in this meeting, pushed his attitude toward big business. He made plain that there could be no question for him of socializing or worker control. The only priority was for a strong state to ensure that production was carried out in the national interest. And it was in this clash here that ultimately the socialist wing dies in the NSDAP. On July 4th, anticipating their expulsion from the NSDAP, Strasser and 25 supporters in the NSDAP publicly announced the socialists are leaving the NSDAP. The rebels, if you will, had in effect purged themselves. The Strasser crisis is what we call this, and it showed above all the strength of Hitler's position in the party. With the elimination of the Strasser clique, any lingering ideological dispute in the party was over. Things had changed drastically since 1925 in the days of the working community. Now it was clear, leader and idea were one and the same. And what this means is that when the NSDAP takes the massive number of seats that they're going to take in the September 1930 elections, that the votes were not cast for the political party. Instead, they were cast for the leader of the political party, which was Adolf Hitler, which you can imagine at this point, because the votes were cast for Hitler and not for the ideology, that he is going to begin to garner incredible strength, not just in the political party, but in the greater Germany as a whole. The elections happened in September. The NSDAP as a leader party is clearly on the rise. Kershaw refers to this victory in September as a political earthquake. I'm sorry. As a political earthquake. The most remarkable result in German parliamentary history. The NSDAP advanced at one stroke from 12 seats, 2.6% of the vote gain of the 28 election, to 107 seats, 18.3%, making it the second largest party in the Reichstag. Almost 6.5 million Germans voted for Hitler's party, which was 8 times as many people voted just 2 years earlier. Okay. All right, well, technical difficulties cut us off right in the middle of that last slide, so we're back. Novelli, you had made a comment during the commercial break about the socialist arm of the Nazi Party. You want to share that again?
Yeah, so one thing that I kind of see discussed in a contemporary sense, and honestly, as weird as this is, it's usually within the context of one political party accusing the other political party of having some sort of characteristic of the Nazi Party. And usually people kind of seem to debate whether or not the Nazi Party is a left-wing party or if it's a right-wing party. And, I thought the last couple slides when you were discussing this, it kind of illustrates another thing that we find so often when we study history is that truths are not black and white very often. And the reality is that it was a socialist party and a nationalist party, hence what's in the title. And, prior to Hitler hijacking the party, several elements of it were socialist. But obviously with the expulsion of Strasser and his cabal, they become more of the nationalist right-wing party that we kind of associate the Nazis to be today. So I just thought that was a really, really good discussion of their political ideology and their leanings, and how it's a little bit more complicated than a black and white understanding of, well, they were left-wing or they were right-wing.
Correct. Absolutely. And again, when it comes to getting popular support for your party, you have to be a chameleon of sorts. You have to be able to adjust to the whims of a society in order to bring people into your membership, into your party. And so it was obvious here that Adolf Hitler, as the sole leader of this party now, was going to be able to do that. You can see here just these numbers alone are a clear mandate that his choice in the NSDAP to expel Strasser, if you will, even though Strasser opted out himself, it did not have any political ramifications, because look at these numbers here, a jump in 18.3%. If people were really concerned about Strasser's expulsion, they would not have shown their support in September of 1930. So pretty obvious mandate here that Hitler has from the people of Germany. Now this is where it gets interesting. Question is, who were Nazis? Well, 3/4 of them were Protestant, non-Catholics. 2/5 of them were middle-class Germans, Germans who were from what we in our country would identify as middle-class people. You see here, look at the same time, the political breakthrough meant that respectable local citizens felt ready to join the party. Teachers, civil servants, Protestant pastors were among the respectable groups altering the party's social standing in the provinces. Once people who were from quote unquote respectable groups, once these people begin showing their support for this political party, it helps the rest of the society believe that, that it's a legitimate party. And I imagine, you hear that concept of FOMO today, fear of missing out. I think that was likely at play in the early 1930s with the NSDAP. Once people of respectable professions began to throw their weight behind the party, I think that this likely created that wave of support that ultimately the party is going to see in the next 2 years.
Well, and it gives them legitimacy.
Exactly. Yep. We're talking about educated people. We're talking about, accomplished individuals in German society. And so there were just a few tasks left before he could bring the NSDAP to the number one party in the Reichstag. He had to become a German citizen. He's actually going to run for president in 1932. against Hindenburg. And again, you gotta think of this as he's gonna do what is essentially an impossible thing, try to become president, but he's gonna do so to get the propaganda, right? To get his name out there and to improve his standing, much like Tiger King did in his bid for governor of was it Oklahoma?
Yes.
Yeah, got his name out there, runs for president, right? And here we are talking about him today. Unemployment needs what's that?
Joe Exotic.
Joe Exotic. What a story that is, huh? Unemployment has to skyrocket. He needs to get big business on his side, and he ultimately needs to become the largest party in the Reichstag. And he's going to get the citizenship question out of the way pretty quick. February 26th, 1932, he's appointed a position as a civil servant in one of the local states in Germany, and he swore his oath as a civil servant to the German state that he was ultimately determined to destroy. He'd run for president in April 1932. He'd lose, but again, this was as much a loss for him as his trial was a loss for him in 1925. It wasn't. He was becoming a much larger, more prominent name in Germany, even by losing. He was able.
So this was the publicity, yeah.
Yeah, and in the run-up to the election of April 1932, he held 20 major speeches in different venues before massive audiences, totaling close to 1 million people. As Kershaw puts it, it was a remarkable electioneering performance, the like of which had never been seen before in Germany. Hindenburg won 53% of the votes, was reelected. Hitler polled 37%. And, you see here, he had done much more than merely save face. Well over 13 million, 2 million more Germans than in the first round had voted for him. The Führer cult, the manufactured commodity of Nazi propaganda, and once the property of a tiny collection of fanatics, was now on the way to being sold to a third of the German population. And so that's where we stand. So next up, on the next episode of the IB 20th Century Show, Hitler gets big business on his side, and once and for all, we'll take the Reichstag for the NSDAP. So there you have it. Any questions, Novelli?
No, I think that was concise, clear, and very fascinating.
Good. Well, I'm going to go splice this episode up and get it out to the tube of views, and we'll be done. So.
Okay.
All right, y'all.
And next week, we'll get it out a little earlier on Tuesday. That's what we talked about, yeah?
Yep, absolutely. We're going to record later this week. We'll record next week's episode later this week. So y'all can expect next Tuesday. You can expect Tuesdays, all the work to be pushed out. So.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Man. Yep, y'all take care.